Hello, it's Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Focus Friday here on August the 4th. So, going to cover a few things today, including the fact that tar spot is starting to show up in the state. We'll tell you where. Going to talk about where we're at for heat unit accumulation. Are we ahead? Are we behind across Michigan? Also, want to cover a little update on corn as well as soybean progression and what we can do in these growth stages we're in right now. So let's jump right in. If you had not heard yesterday, in addition to Monroe County in southeast Michigan, we added 2 additional counties with confirmed tar spot this week. And so in southwest Michigan, it was found in Van Buren County. And between Lansing and the Thumb, it was found in Lapeer County as well. So as we talked last week, we certainly expected this. And if you'd like a more in-depth discussion on tar spot, I do encourage you to jump back a week and listen to that particular series. Won't take a lot of time on it today, other than the fact that it's a great time to be out in those fields looking for tar spot and managing accordingly. Hopefully, you've already gone out maybe and made an R1 application of fungicide anyways, and you've got that already taken care of. But if not, let's be vigilant and get out in those fields. Talking about heat unit accumulation, went a little more in depth this week across the state of Michigan and looked at 4 different locations. First of all, in West Michigan, over near Allegan County. We're about 160 heat units behind, about 8 days if you consider 20 heat unit per day average accumulation. As we move towards the Lansing area, we're only 116 heat units behind, or about 5.8 days. But as we go down to southeast Michigan in the Blissfield area, we're actually 196 heat units behind the 5-year average, putting us at about 9.8 days behind there. Finally looked up in the Thumb in the Kindy area, and they're at 132 heat units behind the 5-year average, or at 6.6 days. So averaging out about a week behind, and not a huge deal, just an opportunity to set expectations as we think towards harvest and making sure that we're ready for that as it comes along. When we think about corn and its development right now, we should be finishing a lot of pollination across the state, moving from R1 into that R2 growth stage, or that blister stage. And what a great time to evaluate our pollination on these ears. So if you think about that, what I do is I go out and grab an average size ear, or a few of them usually, and I'll take my knife and cut the butt end completely right off of that ear, right at the base of that ear. And then I'll run my knife from the butt end all the way up along the side of that ear to the tip. And that allows me to more easily peel back all those layers of husk to get down to the silks, certainly without peeling off the silks. And then we do the ear shake, and we grab that, shake it, and we know that every kernel, of course, has its own individual silk. And only upon successful pollination will that silk release from that kernel. And so whatever we shake off is successfully pollinated. And you'll often find that if you're going to have kernels, or silks rather, stuck to those kernels, they tend to be more on the tip, because ears pollinate beginning from the butt end and ending with the tip of that ear. And so if we run out of pollen or something happens, that's usually the first place to not successfully pollinate. But it is also a good chance, now that we've got that clean ear, to think about doing some yield estimates. And as just a reminder on how we do those estimates, remember the formula is we take that number of kernels around, multiply that by the number of kernels long. And when I do it, I usually don't count those kernels at the tip, or usually leave off a couple even at the butt end of that ear to get the most accurate length kernel count. And then you multiply that by the population, and historically we've divided that by 90, which is representing 90,000 kernels in a bushel. Now, What I will say is more folks are leaning more towards an 80 or maybe even a 70 on that dividing factor on the bottom, depending on, if we have a heavier test weight corn or a deeper kerneled corn, or a larger kerneled corn, we can use those lower numbers to get a more accurate assessment of what that population is. So, if we do some examples on the math, let's say we got an average ear size of 16 kernels round and maybe an average kernel length of 36 kernels long. And let's say we've got a final population of actual ears out there, harvestable ears, at 32,000 of those per acre. If we were to take and multiply those three numbers and divide that by 90, that would give us a 204.8 bushel yield in that field, which isn't all that bad for a lot of Michigan fields. But interesting enough, if we take and divide those same numbers by 80, that bumps that yield estimate up to 230.4. If we divide it by 70, it actually bumps it all the way up to 263.3. And so, there's some flexibility in those numbers. It's just a great estimate is all it is. But if you know that test weight's a little higher or those kernels a little deeper, sometimes you can get a little more accurate number by adjusting that divider, that bottom number, that equation. So as far as soybeans, a lot of that is right now in that R3 growth stage, if not pushing R4. But, just to confirm that R3, if we're looking to identify that, we need to look at those top 4 uppermost nodes of that plant. And in that case, we're looking for any pod which is 3/16 of an inch long, so about 1/4 of an inch long in any of those 4 uppermost nodes. And, of course, the reason we care about R3 in soybeans is that truly is the ideal time for fungicide applications. And of course, if we're going across the field with fungicide, oftentimes a good idea to share the trip with some fertilizer, getting some boron and other micronutrients out there. And interesting enough, as we think about more later season applications, for those folks that are really pushing the envelope on yield on those high producing fields, there's even some additional nitrogen being considered on some of those. So great time to be not giving up on our soybeans as we think about where that yield comes from. It's all about the number of pods or the number of seeds really that we can produce. So more pods, more flowers, and then the size of each of those seeds or those soybeans when we finish up. So number of soybeans and the size of each soybean gives us our total yield potential. So the more we can do to care for these plants late season, especially for soybeans, to improve the number of pods and the size of those beans, gives us the greatest potential for return on investment at harvest. Also, I'd say as we wrap up today, it's great to see a lot of hay getting done. I think there wasn't probably a field out across the state that didn't get cut with the weather we had this week. I know my hay got in the barn this week as well, so we're happy to have that done for one more cutting out there. As far as next week's concerned, probably will not have a podcast for next week because I'm going to be taking some vacation time for our Shiawassee County Fair. It's always a great time for us to spend time with family and friends, and certainly would encourage you, if you're around the Corona area, to stop on in and say hello. And with that, we'll look forward to catching up with everybody here in 2 weeks for our next edition of Focus Friday. This is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist. Have a great week.